Hello everyone. This was a surprisingly great week of chapters, with One Piece, Undead Unluck, and Yozakura family being especially great. So with that, we'll be starting off with One Piece, chapter 1049, and this was a great chapter, showing the end of Kaido. Luffy had finally defeated him with one final punch, as well as us seeing more of Kaido's backstory, more snippets of it. I think by the time we get Rox's backstory, we'll have Kaido's as well. But with this chapter, again, Luffy had defeated Kaido, his punch fell completely through, as well as we see that Kaido believes that whoever Joy Boy is the person that will finally defeat him. And we see in this chapter, Luffy does in fact do that, as well as Momo did succeed in moving Onigashima out of the way, allowing Luffy to full force punch Kaido through the earth in a cartoony fashion, leaving his sort of imprint into the ground. Having it that, the raid has ended with a unanimous victory for the good guys. Now, the big chapters are about to arrive, which is basically mostly the information on the rest of the world. The newspaper chapters are upon us, and oh boy, there's a lot of excitement to come in the next dozen or so chapters. So we all have that to look forward to, but there's a break next week. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. It was pretty great seeing the conclusion to the raid as a whole and Luffy defeating Kaido. Now, I believe that Kaido and Big Mom at this point are probably going to escape, having it that Big Mom wakes up first, tunneling through the ground, grabs Kaido, and they both leave on the Queen Mama Shanter, going back to Whole Cake Island to exact unholy revenge on whoever's quote-unquote attacking and or plotting their revenge tour against everyone who's ever even slightly wronged them. So by the time we see them again at Raftel, they'll be even more vengeful and quote-unquote twisted. Kaido probably less so, but Big Mom will be completely unhinged. The fight itself was good, or the final clash really was good, seeing Luffy reaffirm for about the 100th time that his desire in quote-unquote changing the world, or the world he desires most, is one where he and his friends can eat whatever they want. Again, adding more to the freedom that Luffy has always aspired to. So again, this chapter was pretty great, seeing the conclusion there, and the next few chapters should be big ones, as now we get the world information as well as the cooldown from the very long battle that was the raid of Onigashima, as well as the whole of Wano country's arc is coming to a close. A couple of questions remain, mainly how Momo is going to lead the country, or is Yamato going to join the crew? Is Momo going to join the crew? How is everyone going to be rewarded, and what is the state of the rest of the world? Those are the questions that will hopefully be answered within the next few chapters to get us ready for whatever the penultimate arc is. The penultimate arc is, because we're probably on the highway to Raftel by this point, and it's pretty exciting to see that the conclusion of the series is, in One Piece terms, fast approaching. Now we're on to Undead Unluck, chapter 110. This was a great chapter for a bunch of reasons, but the one reason I'd like to say first is it seems as though I called it correctly. They are going to, in fact, put Fuko into the loop to make the union this time and have it be that she's the one who brings the ultimate victory in the next timeline. When I read that in this chapter, I was very satisfied that I got it right. We'll see how it turns out, because I'm hoping we get kind of a quote-unquote second half to the story, where we actually get to see Fuko building the union, recruiting pretty much everyone, being the leader that she could possibly be, and seeing how this affects Andy and Victor in any way. Like, I'm hoping this arc, the next one, where Fuko goes into the next timeline, is a very long one. Like, it's multiple arcs, it's a new saga type of thing, where we get to see her really rise to the occasion of being the new leader and the real genuine main character, and not just fast tracking everything. I hope they take their time a little bit, really build up a lot of the relationships. We learn more about all the players, from Billy, what caused him to turn in the first place, Nico, seeing what happened with him, even Juiz, seeing her backstory, and seeing more of these other characters that we didn't get to see too much of in the first place. I would like to see a lot more of them, even Fuko growing into her role, being the quote-unquote oldest, the more veteranized of anyone, as now no one will know the truth but her, and she'll have to really rely on that. That next arc could be extraordinary if they don't fast track it. We have to see if that holds true, but for now, that's where they're going, which I think is a correct decision, as it's a decision I would have made. Now for the chapter, Andy ends up talking with Victor, which I thought was a very interesting way to show how that interaction would go, as Rip went to Latala to ease her way as she was dying, and Victor basically says that Andy will have to do anything in his path to make sure that the next loop is one that Fuko can live happily with. And so it looks like Andy is going to turn darker, turn more to the dark side to achieve what he thinks he needs to do to save the next loop and everyone in it, because now he has to be basically the god of death to make sure that nothing can get in the way of Fuko going into the future. And that's very interesting to see, as he is able to get back up through the means of transferring his wounds to Victor, in a manner of speaking, so that he can heal, and then ultimately killing Rip, which was a bold choice. Seeing what we just saw Rip was willing to do, and the sacrifice that Latala made, only for it to be in vain because Andy refuses to give up on what he also believes in. Now, with the opportunity above all others to save everyone with Fuko at the helm. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. I thought it was excellent, seeing the fact that the quote-unquote right decision was made with Fuko going into the next loop to save every timeline. And then seeing the conclusion of the battle between Andy and Rip, with Andy's ultimate victory, getting rid of both Rip and Latala. Now, I'm curious to see what the next couple of arcs could potentially be, with Andy being a bit more fierce, now giving up on this timeline, willingly putting everything in the basket of the next timeline. So he might just go around getting rid of everyone, left, right, and center, maybe trying to collect some memories to help Fuko in the next timeline, if he even retains them. It's very interesting to see what type of things are going to happen now before Fuko goes into the next timeline. And then again, hopefully we get quite a long story there, a second half of this story in the second timeline with Fuko as the new leader of the Union. So, a lot of exciting things could happen within the next few chapters. This one was very good. Now we're on to Mashle, Magic, and Muscles, chapter 107, and this was another good chapter of training. We got to see more of the training with Dot and Lance, as well as some with Finn, and seeing that everyone's preparing the best they can for the battle that's just right around the corner. And as Mash continues his training with Melodol, and now seemingly for his final trial to get stronger, has to fight Melodol. So that should be pretty interesting, as everyone else is still training as hard as they can to prepare, as Innocent Zero's army is marching ever closer to the school, and we see that he is very much throwing more than the good guys can handle at the situation. So it should be very interesting to see how this war is going to potentially go. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the continued training, as well as seeing Mash continue to progress in his training. Lance and Dot seemingly start to work together to combine their considerable might together to make sure they make up for each other's weaknesses for not being quite as strong as the Divine Visionaries. And Finn is seemingly being taught something by the one swordsman Divine Visionary. So everyone's learning something, which is pretty interesting, and seeing how the training is speeding up to the point where the next chapter looks like it'll be the beginning of the battle to come. So that should be very exciting. Now we're on to Sakamoto Days, chapter 70, and this was a good chapter, seeing the continued battle between Slur's henchmen and Shin, with the hearing guy being able to continue to upgrade his capabilities through the power of hearing, being able to mirror the henchman's attack patterns because he can hear the muscles seemingly move, or the radio waves going to the original place, and seemingly counter a lot of what the henchman is able to do, because he's able to hear from inside the machine the echo in his room, like in the room that the henchman's in, and take advantage of that, only for the henchman to completely negate all of that by clapping in such a way that causes both Shin and the hearing guy to blow out their eardrums and completely ruin the hearing guy. He might be done. He might no longer be the same at all. Who knows? But he's out for the count for now. And and Shin doesn't look much better until Sakamoto shows up and saves the day. So now we get to see Sakamoto take on Slur's henchmen and see if Sakamoto is still relatively up to snuff or if he'll get even beaten down. So this next fight should be pretty fun to see, or I wonder if Slur would tell the henchmen to back off because Sakamoto's there. It's all curious. It's very interesting to see what the next chapter has in store. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the continued battle and conclusion to it for the most part, seeing as how Shin and the hearing guy could not get the victory over the henchmen in the end. However, Sakamoto's save means that now Sakamoto can take care of that guy as well as the henchmen as a whole, and perhaps they can move on in this exam, saving as many or as few as they can. So the next few chapters should either be the continuation of this fight, the conclusion of this fight, or the henchmen will simply run away and Sakamoto will move on in the exam. Many options, many avenues. We'll see which one is taken. So now we're on to Mission Yozakura Family, chapter 130, and this was a good chapter, good enough for me to talk about it more, because in this chapter we got to see more of the villainous side of the Yozakura family's father, Momo Yozakura. He is a very good villain in my opinion. Just the right amount of psychotic and overpowered, as well as believing himself to be wholly right in what he's doing, even though Teo, the main character, completely disagrees. So the chapter was relatively short, but we got to see a lot of Momo Yozakura's motivations, and I know the last chapter did that too, but this one really amped up the crazy and really showed him as a extremely threatening villain. And he plans on punishing his children because they don't see his vision. However, he has to stop himself and forgive them for their ignorance and youth so that he can now escape to then make more preparations for what's to come. He does in fact get away, as Teo had to take a rest because he's used up too much of his energy, saving Koyoichiro, the eldest brother, and so that gave Momo the opportunity to leave. So this chapter as a whole, because of Momo's insanity and sheer amounts of threat, overall I think I'm going to give this chapter an A because of that. The villain awakening in Momo was too good to not be excited for, seeing as how he's so threatening and unnerving in his dedication to doing something so wrong that no one agrees with, but believes they'll agree with him in the end. It's fascinating, to say the least. It was very enjoyable to read this chapter, and I thought it was a really fun one to read, seeing the absolute threat level of Momo grow immensely from even other threatening times. This one really pushed it over the top, and seeing as how now the family has to try their best to stop him again, as he is the final boss at this point, as he took down the evil organization he was working for his own reasons. So it'll be interesting to see how they swerve this story again. Maybe somehow there's someone worse than Momo, or it goes back to the first Yozakura head. It could go any which way. That's what this story really loves to do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what way they do it. Either Momo isn't the main bad guy, or he still is, and that's the swerve, that it's actually the correct bad guy. There's so many options and so many avenues. I look forward to seeing which one they take, as well as just seeing more of Momo as a villain. So that was all of the chapters. One Piece was great, seeing the conclusion of the longest fight in One Piece and seeing the first of many great villains fall to Luffy's hand. Undead Unluck was great, seeing the conclusion of the Rip versus Andy fight, as well as seeing that my theory was correct, or my prediction was correct, in that we're going to have Fuko go into the next timeline. Was very exciting for me. Mashle was good for its training. It continued its training arc. Sakamoto continued its battle and had Sakamoto came in and saved the day. And Mission Yozakura Family allowed a villain character to continue to shine in all its vile ways. Now for everything else, My Hero was fine. Jujutsu Kaisen was fine. Had a fun new sort of villain show up and overpower the panda. Blue Box was fine. Continued their relationship dramas, as well as some of the sports drama as well. The Elusive Samurai was good. Its battling has begun. The war to get back the main character's homeland is full on in its beginning effect. The first battle is being waged on a cliffside with our evading protagonist going after the man he had killed once before but lived, and we'll see if he could do it again. Spy Family was good. It concluded the 3-chapter flashback of who Twilight really is, how he became who he is, and his full past. We also find out that it was just a dream because he passed out about Anya's lightning bolt. And because of his flashback, he realized that maybe her just becoming friends with different people is good. So the mission's not quite a failure yet. So it'll be very interesting to see how that story continues to progress and how far it goes. P times 6 was good. It had it that Lucky and the female protagonist actually did not make it to nationals, but they're not kicked out of classical pianist competition, even though Mimin not won, but beat them in that first round, whatever it was. And it seems as though Mimin is bowing out from classical competition and going to do what she should be doing, which is making her own music. But she left the competition with quite a bang, as she was disqualified for changing the song again. I wonder what'll end up happening with her, because I doubt she'll be able to go home again. But it'll be very interesting to see how she goes and develops in whatever way she desires to do so. Ashimon was good as the fighting continued, as the main villain of this arc continued to show different powers and how ruthless he is and is willing to be in order to save what he holds dear. The main character showed a lot more power, however was easily overwhelmed by extreme power of the enemy. Doron was good. It continues to have a nice pace about it to continue along and let you really grow on these characters and feel for them, as the main character, the little Mononoke, goes to try to help a friend, but that friend is evil. So we'll get to see how that arc is going to pull through. It seems pretty interesting so far, and I look forward to seeing how that's going to go and see what type of more character building is brought up from here on in that series. So that was all of the chapters. Again, they were all very good, especially the main 5 were great this week. I might just circle around if a series is really good and I want to talk about it. I'll put it into the top spot. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.